Hello everyone, welcome to Story Vault YouTube channel. Hope you enjoy the video. Scare actors. What's something a guest did that almost or completely made you break character? Story 1. I work at a haunted corn maze. Countless crazy stories. One that I always laugh at is when I jumped out to scare a father and his son. They both fell to the ground, and when they hit the ground, one of them ripped a giant fart. All three of us couldn't control the laughter. Story 2. Was walking around the lobby/parking lot in a show for all ages where we were zombies. Little kids were given wands that, if waved at us, signaled that we would turn away and shamble after someone else. My friend shambles up to a little boy, probably 4 years old, who apparently doesn't have a wand but instead just begins viscerally and repeatedly flipping us off for all he can manage. Non-stop, just finger after finger after finger, both hands. All of us had to stumble away laughing, both because we got the hint and trying not to break character. Story 3. I scared the literal shit out of a guy. My room smelled like human feces for at least 20 minutes. Luckily, he was able to contain it all in his pants. People kept coming in and complaining. I was so embarrassed. I was worried they would think I did it, so I broke character a lot during those 20 minutes to explain what happened. Comments. I honestly just felt so bad for his girlfriend. I had crawled under a table to prepare for my next scare. I didn't see or hear them coming, and my legs started to cramp, so I started to crawl out from under the table, apparently right when they entered my room. Dude saw me, freaked out, literally threw his girlfriend behind him into a wall, shat himself, then proceeded to drag her through the room. She fell twice, in total silence. That was probably my best accidental scare, aside from the permeating smell that lingered for far too long. I imagine they probably had food and drinks at the incredibly dirty bar right around the corner from the haunt. That place would give even an iron stomach shits for days. At Kings Island Haunt a couple weeks ago during the corn maze, the ladies in front of us were having a hard time. One got jump scared and let out what can only be described as a machine gun assault of farts when a dude jumped out at her. Her friend looked over at her and said, "Jenna, be so fucking for real right now, did you shit yourself?" The scare actor retreated but was howling with laughter. I laughed for a good 10 minutes. Story 4. I'm not an actor, but my wife and I got married on Halloween and then went out of town for a honeymoon. So it's probably November 2nd or 3rd, and we're walking around Gatlinburg, and there's this haunted house. My wife is really excited because she had been there before and greatly enjoyed it. So we go up there and investigate if it's open the week after Halloween. The guy that greets us says, "Yeah, we're open, but you'll have to go through the place slowly. There's only 3 of us still working here. Another couple came in off the street around the same time and go through with us. These 2 guys and this one girl do an absolutely insane haunted house. Like you can see/heat them ducking through back rooms and trying to do costume changes. At one point, the Wolfman has a chainsaw because he apparently didn't have time to get the wolf mask off. The female worker does a scary nun outfit at one point, then literally drops her entire frock running out the door as a costume change. We had the greatest time ever. I wish I had some extra funds to tip them, but we did profusely thank them for their performance. Wolfman was coated in sweat and just full-blown panting by the end. Comments. Was that the mysterious mansion? We went to Gatlinburg for a summer vacation when I was 8 or 9, and I noped out of that place and sat outside with my granny. When everyone got done, they told me about all the cool stuff inside, and my dad asked them if I could try again, and they were nice enough to let me. Had such a great time. Got to go back to the city on a spur-of-the-moment trip in my 20s, and was thrilled to see it still open. It was a bit run down in spots, and some of the stuff I remembered was closed off. It was great to relive that memory, though. Now I'm just seeing it's still open. I'm freaking 50, and that place is chugging along. Love it. That's the one. I had to look at Google Maps to confirm. Story 5. I volunteered for a haunted forest trail walk in high school for a few years in a row. They had me set up dressed as a ghost girl swinging in a tree at the very end of the whole thing. A motion light would come on and I'd sing creepy la-la-las while people walked by. Then while they were distracted by me, our chainsaw man would pop out from the bushes behind them and rev the chainsaw and chase them to the exit. At one point, Chainsaw Guy needed an unplanned break, so the werewolf came and took his place for the final chase. Well, the werewolf wasn't super fit and didn't know that area as well. So when the first people walked by, he crawled out of the bushes and immediately began slipping on all fours in the mud on that path, and he ended up accidentally ripping his mask off trying to get up. He just started laughing and apologizing to the 3 people who were walking through, and I couldn't help but laugh too. They weren't upset, lol. He did not work that area again. Story 6. We had a guy hauling ass through the corn maze. Our particular scene was the Wild West. It was dark in the scene, and the path kinda came around a corral. So when he came around, he slipped and fell headfirst into a barrel. A real one, too, not a prop. They must have weighed 200 pounds, so it'd be like hitting a brick wall. He just kinda laid there for a second, and my husband and I completely broke character as we were right by one of the emergency exits. We were like, OMG, dude, are you okay? For real, are you alright? Do you need to leave the maze? Do you need medical attention? And he was lying on the ground, panting with his eyes as wide as possible, and he just kinda shakes his head at us. We were like, are you sure? You're okay? And he just slowly nods at us. So I look at my husband and then back down at him and go, then get the hell out of my town. And my husband was like, get out of here before we skin you alive. And the dude got up and just hauled ass right out of our scene and into the next one. Story 7. I was hiding behind a corner of the haunted barn, and a very thin, very pale Marilyn Manson fellow comes in my corner, contacts and all. I screamed at first to scare the group, and it automatically turned into a real scream. We were just screaming at each other. Comments. Not at all haunted house, but this reminded me of the time my husband got out of bed at like 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. When he came back into the room, he woke me up, and my sleepy brain thought he was an intruder, and I just started screaming, which made him scream in fear, and we just screamed at one another for like 10 seconds, but it felt like 5 minutes. Years and years later, we still crack up when we think about it. This reminded me of a similar situation. I was home visiting my family either before a deployment or right after one. I fell asleep on the couch in my brother's bedroom, and he was asleep on his bed. Our other brother comes in to tell us our mom made breakfast. Well, he just barges in and says, Mom says to come downstairs and eat. It apparently startled my brother awake, and he wakes up screaming, but it was kind of muffled. Like, he couldn't get the scream all the way out. That wakes me up, and I wake up shouting. So in turn, that scared my brother that was still standing by the door. So all 3 of us are just like, HHHHH, for about 15 to 30 seconds, and then started laughing uncontrollably. Story 8. As a participant, my brother and I went into the haunted house. We were getting scared the whole time, and we were ready to leave. In the final area, there's a chain link fence, and it's really dark. As soon as I see a large mat attached to the wall, an actor comes out and uses a chainsaw against a fence, and sparks are flying everywhere. My brother and I are so scared. I jump into my brother like Scooby-Doo into Shaggy's arms. Both of us are screaming like little girls and can't stop. The actor breaks character and says, guys, the exit is right there. We race out the exit. There's a line of people, and everyone asked where the girls were that were screaming their heads off. We were so embarrassed. Comments. If there's a bucket list of scares for these actors, the Scooby-Doo reaction has got to be near the top. You probably made that guy's night. I went to a haunted escape room with my friends. It was based on The Ring. So as we entered the second room, the lights started to flicker and turned off entirely, creepy videotape on the TV, etc. Then an actor crawls out of a hidden panel, and I jumped on my friend from behind. She, understandably, freaked out and ran right back to the first room, dragging me behind her. And the actor chased us. Pure evil LMAO. I banged on the door begging to be let out, and she just calmly strolled her over, unlocked the door, and chased my friends into the third room. I was so stunned I ended up continuing. Hats off to that actor, honestly. Such a scary experience. Story 9. We had a group of teenagers come through with a little kid about 4 or 5 years old. My haunt was scripted, so the group stopped at my station, and I could tell the little one was ready to lose it. I toned it way down for the little guy. His older brother was an absolute shit squirrel. He kept telling the kid I'd be coming to their house to kill him later. I stopped completely, broke character, and got down on the kid's level. As loudly as I could, I told the little one that nobody from my haunt would be coming to his house to kill him and that his brother sucked. Told the kid he was braver than all of the teenagers who thought it was fun to scare a little kid. I promised him that he would make it through just fine and nobody would get him. We had tour guides at our haunt, so the guide went ahead of the group and put the word out. The rest of the cast made things as fun as hell for the kid. Story 10. On a trial walkthrough, I scared one of our bosses and she said, "You grabbed my boo." I immediately took off my gas mask and started apologizing. Couldn't see shit in that gas mask. Story 11. Participant not actor, but I have 2 stories of my friend group causing actors to break character. The first was in a haunted forest. This place did the chainsaw wielders in the middle of the haunt. However, people sprinting away from someone in a chainsaw would mess up distance and timing between groups. So this place had a second dude with a chainsaw that would jump out of the bushes in front of you about 15 feet after the first guy to stop the group from running too fast. One of my friends is super easily scared at this stuff, so she started sprinting away from the first guy. When the second guy jumped out, she went down like a fainting goat. The second guy was barely holding it together until she whispered, "Dang it, you made me pee." He had to hide behind a tree for a minute because he was laughing so hard. At another haunted house with the same group of friends, we went into this room with a large coffin in the middle. The actor in the room was waiting in front of the door to the next room because the group in the next room was still there, had kids that were terrified and moving really slowly. When we got to the bottom of the coffin, it was triggered for the skeleton to pop out at us. However, it was rigged in such a way that the pelvis came out last but was flung out far further. It just ended up looking that the skeleton was doing a giant pelvic thrust. Since we couldn't leave the room, the actor kept the skeleton thing going. My group of mid-late 20s friends couldn't handle ourselves over the pelvic thrusting skeleton, and the giggling got worse and worse. As we were leaving the room, the actor whispered, "It's not that bad." Everyone else was scared. I'm pretty sure he was saying it to himself, but we all heard him, which made half of us feel bad and the other half laugh more. Story 12. I got fear slapped a few times, which wasn't too much of an issue. Some people react that way when genuinely scared and would usually be very apologetic. To get groped, kissed, and then slapped by the same mid-50s drunk lady within the space of 2 seconds. Very odd, but I was just glad it didn't happen to someone else who might have been affected badly by it. Radioed it in to the security guy, and she was promptly escorted out, naturally screaming she hadn't done anything wrong. This was around 10 years ago, so I do hope she has worked through whatever issues she had that made her sexually aggressive towards a chainsaw-wielding lunatic. Comments. Imo, if someone hits people when scared, they should not be going to haunted houses. Agreed. I am not good with jump scares, to the point that I once bit an actor, so I do not visit haunted houses. To be fair, I was about 10 years old. Story 13. We had our own code. When small children are present, you don't scare. It's not their fault their parents are jerks and brought them to an adult event. There were always some parents who would walk through with their small children and complain because nobody was scaring them. Comments. There's actually a haunted house in Vernon, Texas that has a time before they officially start when they open that's called Scaredy Cat time, where you can go through it and they don't scare you, but it's still creepy ambience. My teenage son would love that. He loves spooky and creepy stuff, but absolutely hates jump scares, so we don't go to haunted houses. I always hated when PPL were bringing their 6-year-olds through, and they were absolutely terrified, sobbing to go home. We wouldn't even budge from our positions. One year someone was bitching that it was hard to push their stroller through the corn maze. I did have one little girl that was an absolute boss come through. I saw her first. She was walking about 10 feet ahead of her parents. She must have been 4 at best. She marched right into my scene, took a look around, and just kept on moving. I walked up to her, I'm female by the way, and asked her in my growly voice where she was going. She says this way and just keeps walking. I look at the parents who are just hyperventilating by this point, and I turn back to the little girl and say, "How about we keep you here, and you become one of us?" And she doesn't even look at me as she walks, and she says, "No thank you," which makes her parents roar with laughter, and I nearly break character. I also had this like finger armor thing that had a sharp point. You could get them at Hot Topic. So I gave her a little poke in the shoulder with it and said, "What if I just keep you here?" And she looked at me and said, "That's okay," and proceeded to exit the scene. Her parents still in an absolute riot of laughter. She was absolutely awesome. Not the same scale, obviously, but a buddy and I used to give out candy, and one of us would be a body on the porch for jump scares. One year he was grabbing at kids' ankles. We had our usual code word for whether they were too young, in which case he wouldn't move. So this tiny girl comes up, and I tell him not to move and tell her that he's just a decoration. She proceeds to repeatedly kick him hard in the ribs. He stayed still though, lol. I was the corpse with a bowl of candy in my lap. This about 7-year-old came up to me and firmly demanded, "Don't scare." I decided to listen, and I kept perfectly still as he got his candy. The family moved back to the street and crossed. Well, he looked back at me, and there were no other kids coming, so I waved at him. It moved. It moved. So the family turned, watched me, chastised the kid for seeing things, and started to walk away. The kid looked back again. Naturally, I waved again. It moved. It moved. The family stopped once more. I waited until they gave up and started to turn on the kid again. Then I waved and gave them all a good jump. I could hear the mom exclaim the loudest. Story 14. Not an actor but a participant. We, a group of late 30s women, were running from this massive tall actor wielding a chainsaw. I went straight into panic mode and now know that chainsaws are not for me. We ended up huddled in a corner like deer in the headlights. He eventually lowered the chainsaw and muttered quietly, "You're supposed to run out the exit." We were like, "But we don't see it." He gave us a pitying look and pointed. We ran. Story 15. I found out I was about 5 weeks pregnant a few hours before heading to one of these places. With a history of miscarriages, I was very nervous of going. There was one section where you had to crawl through these tubes that had like little obstacles in them, and my boyfriend asked if there was an alternative for me because we just found out. Sure enough, this terrifying guy in costume lumbers up and maintains character, bringing me around an actor's area to bypass it. As he opened the door to let me rejoin, he growled perfectly in character, "Congratulations, absolute core memory for me, and one of the happiest memories I have." Story 16. Not an actor but made an actor lose their shit giggling. When I was 18, my best friend and I took dates to a haunted house. In one room, there was a mannequin dressed up as an asylum patient laying on a surgical table. Being a teenage moron, I go up to the mannequin and proceed to dry hump its hand for humorous effect. As I'm humping this hand, I say out loud, "Huh. Weird. This hand is so warm." It was a dude. He proceeds to give me a little squeeze and cackles maniacally. I holler, jump a couple feet in the air, and everyone else loses their shit. I flee the room, and old boy is just laying there laughing till he cries, saying it's so warm, and then breaking into more fits of laughter. It's been 20 years, and I still haven't lived it down. Story 17. I worked the first year at a scare event in the UK. We had a stooge in the groups, and my role was to grab the stooge out of the group and drag him into a shed. There was a fairly quick turnaround, and we'd gotten into a routine. I'd drag him into the shed, I'd take my mask off, and we'd grab a couple of sweets from the tub I'd brought, and then he'd head off through the back door to go join another group. One time there was a hero in the group. After I dragged him into the shed, I'd taken my mask off and grabbed the tub of sweets. One of the customers from the group barged into the room and stood there with a blank look in his face. I offered him some sweets, but he just backed out of the room and closed the door. Story 18. Not an actor. I once went to a haunted house with friends. Someone jump scared us. I didn't know there were gonna be jump scares, and I hate jump scares. A zombie with a macaque jumped us. I was so shocked I clung to my friend's backpack. Well, my friend had a different reaction. He tried to run. Cue me being dragged across a fake scary bridge, holding onto a backpack, while my friend screams his heart out, thinking that he's being dragged back by Zombie Machete. Zombie Machete burst out laughing, then helped me up. Story 19. Participate, not the actor. But when my wife and I were dating in college, we went with a group of friends to a haunted house. Now, for some context, I am pretty hard to scare, but my wife is incredibly easy to scare. There was one part where we had to crawl through some stuff in a single final line, and I was at the end of the group. My wife was freaking out and was having me hold her hand in this crawl tunnel. Since we were pretty much single file, she couldn't see me well, and it was pretty dark. Well, during it, a guy tried to come up behind and scare me, but I saw it coming. So instead, I told my wife I had to let go for a second and proceeded to have the dude take my wife's hand. When they popped out of the tunnel, everyone freaked out. The dude and I had a pretty good laugh about it. Story 20. We just went to a haunted house with my 9-year-old daughter. She would notice the people hiding immediately and say person before they got a chance to scare us. If they did a good scare anyway or had a cool costume, she complimented them and thanked them for scaring her. Comment. Is your daughter Louise Belcher? So, that's the end of the video. Hit the like button and subscribe. Have a good day and see you in the next video.